So I don't think this should be a surprise to anybody that has been paying attention to the NHL rumor mill, but I guess it's within our best interest to go out there and cover all our bases and just talk about what comes out as it comes out. Because when it comes to one of the biggest, and I mean literally biggest, in terms of size on the ice and monetary impact, one of the biggest guys on the trade market this free agency period, we've had a lot to say about New York Rangers captain Jacob Trouba. Big dude, solid right-handed defenseman, and a player who has been on the market as a trade candidate. Not because the New York Rangers don't like him as their captain, not because he's a bad leader, not because necessarily he's the worst player in the world, but for $8 million a year, and the services that he provides, you can definitely say that Jacob Trouba leaves a lot more to be desired on the ice outside of his physical play and his ability to really hurt people with his elbow. Jacob Trouba had a really rough playoffs, especially towards the end there. And a lot of Rangers fans were clamoring about how this guy should not be on the team anymore, he is not good enough to justify keeping his cap hit around, and despite the leadership qualities that he brings, he's a well-liked guy in the room, he stands up for his teammates, the carelessness within his game is also something that I think Rangers fans have pointed to as well. Sure, it's nice to have a guy who is physical, but if he's continually getting other people hurt, if he's continually putting himself in suspension-worthy situations, where's the value in that regard? Now, when it comes to Jacob Trouba, because his name was already circulating on a bunch of trade rumors heading into free agency day, it was a big shock to everybody, myself included, when Trouba ended off the first week of free agency still a member of the New York Rangers. There were already reports saying that he was going to get traded to Detroit, that he was on their radar, and that the Wings wanted to get this guy. And a lot of Wings fans were reacting to that sentiment in a very negative way. Hey, why is Stevie Y going after this player? Do they really need somebody to take more minutes away from Sider, etc., etc., etc.? But the trade did not go through. With this in mind, let's go over to a segment on TSN TV from yesterday by Jay Onrait. He had himself Emily Kaplan on the show as a guest, and they had spoken about the Rangers Trouba update situation. Of course, this is a video, so it's not really something we can screenshot, but instead, we're going to be screenshotting today's edition of Spectre's Hockey because Lyle Richardson does summarize the comments made by those two on the show. Onrait and Kaplan discussed the recent trade rumors swirling around New York Rangers captain Jacob Trouba. The Rangers reportedly had a deal on the table with the Wings, however, the 30-year-old defenseman didn't want to do it, with his wife still finishing her residency as a medical doctor. Kaplan believes that Trouba will be in the Rangers lineup when they start the season in October, even though it was really uncomfortable over the last few days and weeks. She noted that Trouba did use his no-trade protection in his contract to nix the deal with the Wings. So with this idea in mind, we have ourselves confirmation from one of the more reputable NHL insiders on the scene that Jacob Trouba was almost traded to Detroit, but he himself rejected that notion. Now, as we had spoken about in the video going over why Trouba did not end up getting traded in the first place, him sticking up for his family and saying that, hey, I want to stay here in the area, my wife's doing her thing, I want her to be able to finish that, I don't want to relocate and have everybody displaced because it would really mess up her own progression in her career. That's totally admirable. But as we had been talking about as well, Jacob Trouba and his contract is only on a modified no-trade clause right now, which means that there are teams that he is allowed to get traded to, but these are teams that he himself is also vetoing trades to by some sort of a way. I don't really think we've gotten confirmation as to how that's happening. Like, how can he nix a trade to a team that he is allowed to get traded to per his modified no-trade clause? A lot of speculation has gone out there and said, okay, maybe if Trouba ends up getting traded, he'll just not report, and that would be a violation of the contract, and no team wants to have that happen to them. So it becomes a lot more complicated when you think about it that way. But with this in mind, when it comes to Trouba rejecting the Detroit Red Wings, we had ourselves word from Michael DeRosa of the Hockey News that another team that is a lot closer to New York than Detroit is apparently interested in Trouba as well. Michael DeRosa of the Hockey News has reported that the Buffalo Sabres are possibly eyeing Jacob Trouba. Great segue, I know. And if you wanted to talk about the connection, you want to talk about New York, you want to talk about how close some of these teams are, the New York Rangers and MSG, they are pretty close to Buffalo, New York. Now, sure, it's not like they're next-door neighbors or anything. There is a little bit of distance there. But Buffalo, New York to New York, New York is a lot closer than Detroit, Michigan to New York, New York. And if there was already some contesting from Trouba and his party to say, okay, no, we're not going to do Detroit, they're too far away, is Buffalo potentially an option here? Could you add a Jacob Trouba to play alongside of an Owen Power, for example, and really bolster up the size on that right blue line? Having Dahlin, Power, and Trouba as a triple threat in your top four seems like a really interesting idea, because with Jacob Trouba, a lot of people will talk smack about his mobility, people don't like the way he reads the game, people don't like how he chases for hits, and some engagement issues as well, how he takes himself out of the play by making rambunctious and careless physical moves. But if he's playing with a guy like Dahlin or Power, there's a lot more stability there because those players are very mobile, they make smarter reads, and they're a lot more polished up defensively. Even though Jacob Trouba, of course, has been in the league longer than both of those guys combined. It is kind of weird when you think about just how badly Jacob Trouba has aged into the contract and how poorly he plays in his own zone. And the interesting thing about this Buffalo Sabres idea is Sabres fans seem to be on board. Or at least, some of them do. Here's a comment made by Principals RK on the Sabres sub. Is Jacob Trouba overpaid? Yes. Does he suck? Yes. Do I think we need a guy that will elbow people in the head? Yes. We shouldn't give up an asset for him, but if they pay us to take him, then I'm in. If just to keep our own team safer. Drury has declared that even though they want to get rid of him, he is untouchable. Drury's cat. Okay, that's a funny joke. Really interesting observation there, and a parallel, too, to the Schrodinger's cat phenomenon. There are some other comments here saying no. I mean, it's a hard pass. That $8 million cap hit would be brutal. So I guess it really depends on who you ask. But the fact that Sabres fans are not unanimously saying, oh no, we don't want that guy. Like, there is an argument to say that he would be a positive benefit to this team. That intrigues me. And it starts getting me interested as to what the New York Rangers could be offering these teams to unload a player like Trouba away. We know that this player is not going to be like, oh, you're going to trade Trouba for a first. No, you're probably going to trade Trouba with a first for future considerations or something in order to get the Rangers what it is that they want. They don't want this guy in his contract anymore, despite the fact that he is their captain and that he is a pretty versatile leader. I say versatile leader, not a versatile hockey player, because when it comes to his on-ice ability, it's really tarnished itself over the past few years here. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Jacob Trouba idea, the fact that he firstly officially rejected a trade to the Detroit Red Wings, and secondly, how do you feel about the Buffalo Sabres being involved here and the Sabres potentially throwing their hat into the ring as a potential suitor for Jacob Trouba and the next 2 years of that $8 million contract. I say 2 years, it expires in 2026, but, you know, we have this upcoming season to play through as well, so 2 years. Sabres fans, what are your thoughts on acquiring a guy like Jacob Trouba? Are you in this? Are you not? Yay or nay? If you're a Red Wings fan, how do you feel hearing about Trouba officially rejecting Stevie Y and his trade right there, even though a trade seemed to have already been on the table? I also wonder, you know, if the Red Wings were able to get Jacob Trouba, let's say they got Trouba in a first, for nothing, does that make the Jake Walman trade more stomachable? We had seen a lot of people pissed off about that move. There was a lot of backlash. If there was a Trouba trade with some assets in return, does that make the Walman trade a lot easier to acknowledge? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Red Wings, the Sabres, the Rangers. If you're a fan of any of these teams, what are your opinions on this situation? I hope you enjoyed this Vishashros 99, and bye.